The morning sun painted the desert hills in shades of gold as Marine Corporal Sarah Chen checked her medical supplies for the third time. Her hands moved with practiced efficiency, counting bandages, morphine injectors, and antibiotics. At 24, she had already seen more battlefield injuries than most doctors see in a lifetime. Her small frame and quiet demeanor often fooled people into thinking she was just another support soldier. But the Marines in her unit knew better. When bullets started flying, Sarah was the angel they prayed would find them. Sarah had joined the Marines straight out of high school in her small Texas town. While her classmates went to college or started families, she felt called to serve something bigger than herself. Her father, a Vietnam veteran, had taught her to shoot when she was 12. But Sarah was more interested in healing than hurting. The military offered her a chance to be both a soldier and a healer, so she chose the path of a field medic. During her training at Camp Lejeune, Sarah quickly stood out. Not just for her medical skills, which were exceptional, but for something her instructors couldn't quite put their finger on. When other trainees panicked during high-stress scenarios, Sarah became impossibly calm. When chaos erupted around her, she seemed to see everything with crystal clarity. Her shooting scores were good, but not remarkable. What was remarkable was how she never missed what she was aiming for. Ever. Now, 3 years later, Sarah was embedded with a reconnaissance unit in Afghanistan. The team was made up of 8 Marines, all men, all bigger and stronger than her, but they protected her like she was their little sister, and she kept them alive like they were her blood family. Staff Sergeant Mike Rodriguez, the team leader, often said that Sarah had ice water in her veins. Nothing seemed to rattle her. Not the sound of incoming mortars. Not the sight of devastating injuries. Not even the time she had to perform emergency surgery in the back of a moving Humvee under enemy fire. The mission that would change everything started like any other. Intelligence had located a high-value target in a compound about 15 kilometers north of their base. The target was believed to be a bomb maker responsible for several attacks on coalition forces. The plan was simple: get in, capture or eliminate the target, gather intelligence, and get out. Sarah's job was to stay with the vehicles and provide medical support if needed. The team moved out before dawn, traveling in 2 armored vehicles across the rocky terrain. Sarah sat quietly in the back of the lead vehicle, her medical pack secure beside her. She had learned to use these quiet moments to center herself, to prepare mentally for whatever the day might bring. She thought about her younger brother back home who was starting college, about her mother who worried constantly, and about her father who was proud but scared every day she was deployed. As they approached the target area, the vehicles stopped about a kilometer away from the compound. The team would move the rest of the way on foot to avoid detection. Sarah helped establish a casualty collection point behind a cluster of large rocks, then settled in to wait. Through her binoculars, she could just make out the compound where her team was heading. It looked quiet, almost deserted, but Sarah had learned that in Afghanistan, quiet could be the most dangerous thing of all. The team had been gone for about 30 minutes when Sarah heard the first shots. Sharp cracks echoing off the hills told her that her Marines had made contact. She immediately began preparing her medical supplies, laying out everything she might need in organized rows. More gunfire erupted, this time sustained and coming from multiple weapons. Her radio crackled to life with urgent voices reporting their situation. Rodriguez's voice cut through the static. "We've got multiple casualties. Chen, we need you up here now." Without hesitation, Sarah grabbed her medical pack and started moving toward the compound. As she ran across the open ground, she could hear the intensity of the firefight increasing. The sound of AK-47 seconds mixed with the deeper thumps of RPGs hitting nearby structures. When Sarah reached the compound, she found her team pinned down behind a low wall. 2 Marines were already wounded, one with a leg injury and another with shrapnel wounds to his arm and chest. She immediately went to work, applying pressure bandages and administering pain medication, while bullets whizzed overhead. Her hands never shook. Her voice never wavered. She was exactly where she belonged, doing exactly what she was trained to do. But as she worked on the wounded Marines, Sarah began to notice something that made her blood run cold. The enemy fire was too accurate, too coordinated. These weren't just random insurgents shooting wildly. Someone was directing their fire with military precision. Worse, she realized that the enemy had positioned themselves to completely surround the compound. Her team wasn't just in a firefight, they were trapped. Rodriguez crawled over to her position, his face grim. "Chen, we've got a problem. There's a sniper out there, and he's good. Real good. He's picking us off one by one, and we can't get a fix on his position." As if to emphasize his point, another shot rang out, and chips of concrete exploded from the wall just inches from Sarah's head. Sarah carefully raised her head to peer over the wall, scanning the surrounding hills through her binoculars. Her trained eye, developed through years of observing and treating battlefield injuries, began to analyze the trajectory of the incoming fire. She studied the patterns, the timing, the way the bullets struck their targets. Slowly, like pieces of a puzzle coming together, she began to understand what they were facing. The enemy sniper was positioned in a building about 600 meters away, hidden in what appeared to be the top floor of a partially destroyed structure. From there, he had a commanding view of the entire compound and could pick off anyone who showed themselves for more than a few seconds. What made him especially dangerous was that he wasn't just a good shot. He was a patient hunter who waited for the perfect moment to fire. Sarah's mind raced as she considered their options. The team's designated marksman had already been wounded in the leg and couldn't make the shot. The other Marines were good soldiers, but none of them had the skills needed to engage a target at that distance under these conditions. As she watched through her binoculars, the enemy sniper fired again, and another one of her Marines cried out in pain. Something shifted inside Sarah at that moment. All her life, she had been focused on saving lives, on healing the wounded and bringing her fellow soldiers home safely. But now, watching her friends being systematically hunted down, she realized that sometimes the only way to save lives was to take one. The same steady hands that had sutured countless wounds, the same clear vision that had guided her through hundreds of medical procedures, the same calm focus that had never failed her in crisis situations. All of these gifts could serve a different purpose. Sarah closed her eyes for just a moment, feeling the weight of the decision she was about to make. When she opened them again, they held a new determination. She turned to Rodriguez and said quietly, "Sergeant, I think I can take that shot." Rodriguez looked at her like she had lost her mind. "Chen, you're a medic, not a sniper. That's a 600-meter shot in combat conditions. Even our best marksman would have trouble with that." Sarah met his gaze steadily. "Sergeant, I've been watching that sniper for the last 10 minutes. I know exactly where he is, and I know I can hit him. But I need the M110 rifle from Martinez." The wounded marksman, Martinez, overheard the conversation and managed a weak smile despite his pain. "Doc, if you think you can make that shot, the rifle is yours. But understand, if you miss, he's going to know exactly where you are, and he'll put one right through your head." Sarah nodded, understanding the stakes completely. She crawled over to where Martinez had positioned his sniper rifle, a semi-automatic M110 with a powerful scope. As she settled behind the weapon, she felt a strange sense of familiarity, as if she had done this 1,000 times before. Her father's hunting lessons from childhood came flooding back, but this was different. This was about saving the lives of her friends. She adjusted the scope, accounting for distance, wind, and elevation. Through the lens, she could just make out the muzzle of the enemy sniper's rifle protruding from a window in the distant building. She controlled her breathing, slowing her heart rate the same way she did when performing delicate medical procedures. The chaos of the firefight seemed to fade away until there was nothing in the world except her, the rifle, and the target. Sarah had fired exactly 3 shots in combat before this moment, all warning shots to keep enemies at a distance while she treated wounded Marines. She had never aimed to kill another human being, but as she settled the crosshairs on the distant window, she thought about every wounded soldier she had treated, every life she had saved, and every Marine who was counting on her right now. The shot, when it came, surprised even Sarah with its simplicity. No dramatic pause, no internal struggle, just a gentle squeeze of the trigger and the crack of the rifle. Through the scope, She saw the enemy sniper's rifle suddenly tilt downward and disappear from the window. The incoming fire from that position immediately stopped. Rodriguez, who had been watching through his own binoculars, stared at Sarah in amazement. "Chen, that was a perfect shot. You just took out a sniper at 600 meters like it was nothing." But Sarah wasn't finished. With the main sniper eliminated, she could now see other enemy positions that had been hidden before. Moving with fluid precision, she began systematically engaging targets that posed the greatest threat to her team. Each shot was calculated, each target chosen not for maximum casualties, but for maximum effect in protecting her Marines. In less than 10 minutes, Sarah had fired 8 shots and eliminated 6 enemy fighters, including 2 machine gun teams that had been keeping her squad pinned down. The remaining insurgents, apparently deciding they were facing a professional sniper team rather than a single medic, began to withdraw from their positions. As the gunfire died down, Sarah carefully secured the rifle and immediately returned to her medical duties, checking on the wounded Marines and calling for evacuation helicopters. To her, what had just happened was simply another tool she had used to accomplish her primary mission: keeping her team alive. But for the Marines who had witnessed Sarah's transformation from field medic to deadly accurate sniper, the world had just shifted on its axis. They had always known she was special, but they had never imagined that their quiet, gentle medic possessed such lethal skills. As they waited for the helicopters to arrive, they looked at Sarah with a new mixture of respect, amazement, and just a little bit of fear. The enemy compound was now secure. But Sarah Chen had just discovered something about herself that would change the course of her military career forever. She had the rare combination of natural talent, technical skill, and mental toughness that made for an exceptional sniper. More importantly, she had proven that she could use those skills when lives depended on it. As the evacuation helicopters appeared on the horizon, Sarah helped load the wounded Marines while trying to process what had just happened. She had saved her team, completed the mission, and discovered abilities she never knew she possessed. But she also knew that word of what she had done would spread quickly through the military community. The quiet field medic who could make impossible shots under pressure was exactly the kind of soldier that special operations units were always looking for. 3 weeks after the compound incident, Sarah Chen was sitting in the base medical facility, filling out routine paperwork when Staff Sergeant Rodriguez approached her with an unusual expression on his face. Behind him stood 2 men in clean desert fatigues with no visible unit patches. Sarah recognized the look immediately. Special operations personnel, trying not to look like special operations personnel. "Chen, these gentlemen would like to have a word with you," Rodriguez said, then quickly excused himself, leaving Sarah alone with the mysterious visitors. The taller of the 2 men, who appeared to be in his mid-30s with the kind of quiet confidence that came from years of dangerous missions, introduced himself simply as Commander Walsh. His companion, younger but with the same alert eyes, was introduced as Petty Officer First Class Thompson. Neither man offered their full names or unit designations. "Corporal Chen, we've been reviewing the after-action reports from your recent engagement," Commander Walsh began, settling into a chair across from her. "What you accomplished out there was remarkable. 6 confirmed kills at distances ranging from 400 to 600 meters, all while under fire, using an unfamiliar weapon system." Sarah shifted uncomfortably. She hadn't been seeking recognition for what happened at the compound. In her mind, she had simply done what was necessary to protect her team. "Sir, I was just doing my job. My Marines were in danger, and I had to act." Thompson leaned forward slightly. "Chen, your job is as a field medic. What you did out there went far beyond the scope of normal medical duties. We've talked to your team, and they all say the same thing: you transformed into a different person when you got behind that rifle." Commander Walsh opened a folder he had been carrying. "We've done some research into your background. Your father taught you to hunt as a child. You were on your high school shooting team for 2 years before enlisting. But according to your military records, you've never received formal sniper training. So help us understand, where did that level of skill come from?" Sarah thought carefully before answering. The truth was, She wasn't entirely sure herself. When she had picked up Martinez's rifle, something had just clicked. The distance calculations, the wind compensation, the target identification, it had all felt as natural as taking a patient's pulse. "I don't know, sir. It just felt right. Like I was supposed to be doing it." The two men exchanged glances. Walsh continued, "Chen, what we're about to discuss is classified, and you're under no obligation to accept what we're going to offer. But we think you might be interested in some additional training opportunities." Thompson pulled out what appeared to be a standard transfer request form. "We're attached to a special operations unit that's always looking for personnel with unique skill sets. Your combination of medical training and natural marksmanship ability is exactly what we need for certain types of missions." Sarah studied both men carefully. She had heard rumors about recruitment approaches like this, special operations teams that pulled promising soldiers from conventional units for specialized training. "What kind of missions, sir?" "The kind where having a medic who can also eliminate threats at extended range could mean the difference between mission success and mission failure," Walsh replied. "The kind where your team might need someone who can both save lives and take them when necessary," Thompson added. "We're talking about Navy SEAL team assignments. Chen, the most elite warriors in the U.S. military. It would mean leaving your current unit, undergoing months of intensive training, and becoming part of operations that most people will never hear about." Sarah felt her heart rate increase. Navy SEALs were legendary. Even among Marines, they were the soldiers who handled the impossible missions, who went places no one else could go, who succeeded when failure wasn't an option. The idea that they wanted her seemed almost impossible to believe. "Sir, I'm honored, but I'm a Marine medic. I've never even considered special operations. And aren't there rules about women in combat roles?" Sarah asked, knowing that military policies had been changing but uncertain about the current status. Walsh smiled for the first time since sitting down. "The rules have been evolving, Chen. What matters more than regulations is capability. You've already proven you can perform in combat situations. We're offering you a chance to take those skills to the next level." Thompson handed her several documents. "These are aptitude tests and psychological evaluations. If you're interested, you would complete these and then report for a preliminary assessment phase. No commitment required at that stage. You can walk away any time during the first 30 days. Sarah stared at the papers, her mind racing. 3 weeks ago, she had been a field medic, focused entirely on saving lives. Now she was being recruited for the most elite military unit in the world. The transformation seemed surreal. "Can I ask you something, sir?" she said finally. "Why me? There have to be hundreds of soldiers with better shooting scores, more combat experience, more training." Commander Walsh leaned back in his chair, considering his answer. "Chen, technical skills can be taught. Equipment can be provided. What can't be taught is the ability to remain calm under extreme pressure while making split-second decisions that affect people's lives. You've been doing that as a medic for 3 years. The transition to tactical operations is shorter than you might think," Thompson added. "Plus, you've already demonstrated something most snipers never develop: the ability to switch instantly between roles. 1 minute you were treating wounded Marines, the next minute you were eliminating threats, then you went right back to medical duties. That kind of mental flexibility is rare." Sarah looked down at the forms again. Part of her was excited by the possibility of new challenges, of pushing herself beyond anything she had ever attempted. But another part of her was terrified of leaving behind everything familiar, of potentially failing in an environment where failure could cost lives. "How long would I have to decide?" she asked. "Take a week," Walsh said, standing up. "Talk to people you trust, think it over. But understand that opportunities like this don't come along often. You've got natural abilities that could save a lot of lives in the right situations." After the two men left, Sarah sat alone in the medical facility, staring at the forms they had given her. The implications of what they were offering began to sink in. If she accepted, she would be leaving behind the Marines who had become her family, the medical work that had defined her identity, and the relative safety of her current role. But she would also be joining the most elite military unit in the world, receiving training that would push her to her absolute limits, and potentially making a difference on missions that could affect national security. The scared girl from Texas who had joined the Marines to serve something bigger than herself was being offered a chance to serve something even bigger. That evening, Sarah called her father from the base phone center. Without revealing classified details, she explained that she had been offered a transfer to a special operations unit. His response surprised her. "Sarah, when I taught you to shoot all those years ago, I saw something special in you. You had a natural understanding of weapons and distances that I'd never seen before. Your mother and I always wondered where your military service would take you." His voice paused. "If this is what you want, if you think you can handle it, then you have our support." Over the next few days, Sarah spoke with Rodriguez and several of her fellow Marines. Their reactions were mixed: pride that she had been chosen for something so prestigious, concern about the dangers she would face, and sadness at the thought of losing her from their unit. Martinez, the marksman whose rifle she had used at the compound, was the most encouraging. "Chen, I've been shooting competitively for 15 years, and I've never seen anyone make a cold shot like that under combat conditions. If the SEALs want you, it's because they recognize something special." As the week progressed, Sarah found herself thinking more and more about the possibilities. She researched SEAL training programs and learned about the physical and mental challenges she would face. The statistics were sobering. Most candidates didn't complete the program, but something inside her was drawn to the challenge, to the idea of discovering what she was truly capable of. On the last day before she had to give her answer, Sarah returned to the spot where she had made those crucial shots during the compound firefight. Standing there, looking out at the hills where the enemy sniper had been positioned, she tried to understand what had happened to her that day. The truth was, she had felt more alive, more focused, more completely herself in those few minutes behind the rifle than she had ever felt before. The medical work was fulfilling and important, but there had been something different about the precision shooting, something that felt like destiny. When Commander Walsh and Thompson returned a week later, Sarah was waiting for them with her decision. She had completed all the forms, passed the preliminary tests, and mentally prepared herself for whatever came next. "I want to do this," she said simply. "I want to see what I'm capable of." Walsh smiled and handed her a set of transfer orders. "Welcome to the teams, Chen. Your transportation leaves tomorrow morning. Pack light. Everything you need will be provided during training." As Sarah packed her few personal belongings that night, she thought about the journey that had brought her to this point. From a small town in Texas, to the mountains of Afghanistan, to the prospect of becoming a Navy SEAL, her path had been anything but predictable. Rodriguez stopped by to see her off. "Chen, I've served with a lot of Marines over the years, but I've never seen anyone with your combination of skills and heart. Whatever happens next, know that you'll always be one of us." The next morning, as Sarah boarded the transport plane that would take her to her new assignment, she felt a mixture of excitement and terror. She was leaving behind everything familiar to pursue something that might be beyond her capabilities. But she was also following a path that felt right, that honored both her desire to save lives and her newly discovered ability to protect them in ways she had never imagined. As the plane lifted off, Sarah looked down at the base where she had served as a field medic for the past year. Those experiences had shaped her, taught her about courage under fire, and prepared her for challenges she couldn't have imagined when she first enlisted. Now she was heading toward something even more challenging, even more demanding, and potentially even more rewarding. She was going to find out if a quiet field medic from Texas had what it took to become one of the most elite warriors in the world. The transformation had begun 3 weeks ago, behind a sniper rifle in Afghanistan. Now it was about to continue in ways that would test every aspect of her character, her skills, and her determination. Sarah Chen was no longer just a field medic who could shoot. She was a soldier embarking on a journey to become something entirely new. The Bell UA-60 Black Hawk helicopter cut through the pre-dawn darkness, carrying Sarah Chen toward the most challenging moment of her military career. 6 months of intense SEAL training had pushed her beyond every limit she thought she had. But this was different. This was her first operational mission with SEAL Team 7, and she was about to find out if everything she had learned could translate to real-world combat situations. Sitting across from her in the helicopter were 5 of the most experienced special operations soldiers in the U.S. military. Master Chief Petty Officer Jake Morrison, the team leader, had been a SEAL for 12 years and had completed more classified missions than Sarah could count. Next to him sat Senior Chief Petty Officer Marcus Williams, a demolitions expert whose calm demeanor masked an encyclopedic knowledge of explosives. Petty Officer First Class David Kim was their communications specialist, while Petty Officer Second Class Tony Ramirez handled reconnaissance and intelligence gathering. Finally, there was Petty Officer First Class Alex Porter, the team's designated marksman, and the man who would be watching Sarah's back during the mission. The training period had been unlike anything Sarah had ever experienced. The physical demands were brutal, swimming for miles in rough ocean conditions, running endless miles carrying heavy equipment, climbing obstacles that seemed designed to break both body and spirit. But the mental challenges had been even more intense. Learning to think like a special operations soldier, to make split-second decisions under extreme pressure, to operate effectively as part of a tight-knit team where everyone's life depended on everyone else's performance. The other SEAL candidates had initially been skeptical of Sarah's presence. Not because she was a woman. The teams had been slowly integrating female operators for several years, but because she came from a medical background rather than a traditional combat role. They expected her to struggle with the tactical aspects of the training while excelling at the medical portions. Instead, Sarah had surprised everyone, including herself. Her shooting scores were among the highest in the class. Her performance during close-quarters combat drills was exceptional. Most remarkably, she seemed to have an intuitive understanding of battlefield tactics that impressed even the veteran instructors. It was as if all those years of treating combat casualties had given her an inside view of how battles unfolded, what decisions led to success or disaster, and how to anticipate enemy actions. The mission briefing had been straightforward on the surface but complex in execution. A high-value terrorist target had been located in a compound in Syria, surrounded by an unknown number of armed guards, and potentially holding American hostages. Intelligence suggested the target would only be at the location for a few more hours before moving to another safe house. The team's job was to infiltrate the compound, eliminate or capture the target, gather any intelligence materials, and extract any hostages, all without alerting nearby enemy forces that could overwhelm them before they could escape. Sarah's role was unique. She would serve as both the team's sniper, providing overwatch and long-range threat elimination, and as their medic, ready to treat any casualties during the mission. It was exactly the kind of dual capability that had made her attractive to special operations in the first place, but it also meant she would be carrying twice the responsibility of any other team member. As the helicopter approached the drop zone, Master Chief Morrison moved through the cabin, conducting final equipment checks with each team member. When he reached Sarah, he paused for a moment, studying her face in the dim red light of the cabin. "Chen, you know this is different from training, right? No do-overs, no instructors stopping the exercise when things go wrong. Once we hit the ground, you're responsible for keeping us alive and completing the mission." Sarah met his gaze steadily. "Understood, Master Chief. I'm ready." Morrison nodded, apparently satisfied with what he saw. "Good, because we're counting on you to be our eyes and our guardian angel out there. Don't let us down." The helicopter touched down briefly in a small clearing about 3 kilometers from the target compound. The team moved quickly and silently into the darkness, their night vision equipment turning the landscape into a green-tinted world of shadows and movement. Sarah carried her sniper rifle, medical supplies, and standard combat gear, nearly 60 pounds of equipment that she had learned to move with during months of training. The approach to the compound took 2 hours of careful movement across rocky terrain. The team moved in a tactical formation, with Morrison and Williams taking point, Kim and Ramirez covering the flanks, and Porter and Sarah bringing up the rear. Every step was calculated, every movement coordinated through hand signals and whispered communications. When they reached their observation point overlooking the target compound, Sarah immediately began studying the area through her rifle scope. The compound consisted of 3 buildings, arranged around a central courtyard, with high walls and a single gate. Through thermal imaging, she could identify at least 8 enemy guards in various positions. plus an unknown number of people inside the buildings. Morrison's voice came through her earpiece. "Chen, what do you see?" "8 guards visible," Sarah whispered back. 2 at the main gate, 2 on the roof of the central building, 2 patrolling the courtyard, and 2 more positioned at what looks like a rear entrance. "I can't get a clear view inside the buildings from this angle." "Roger that." "Porter, you and Chen set up overwatch positions on the ridge. We'll move in from the east side and work our way through the compound. Chen, you provide cover fire if needed, but try to keep it quiet. We don't want to alert every hostile in the area." Sarah and Porter moved to separate positions along the ridge overlooking the compound. From her spot, Sarah had clear lines of sight to most of the enemy positions, while Porter covered the areas she couldn't see. The plan called for the other team members to infiltrate quietly, neutralizing guards silently when possible, and locating the target and any hostages. For the first 30 minutes, everything went according to plan. Morrison's team moved like ghosts through the compound, systematically clearing rooms and eliminating guards without raising an alarm. Sarah watched through her scope, tracking their progress and monitoring for any threats they might not see. Then everything went wrong at once. A guard who had been sleeping in one of the buildings suddenly woke up and stumbled into the courtyard, immediately spotting Morrison's team. Before Sarah could react, the guard opened fire with an AK-47, his shots echoing off the compound walls like thunder. Within seconds, the entire area erupted in gunfire as more guards emerged from concealed positions. "Contact! Contact!" Morrison's voice came through the radio. "We've got multiple hostiles converging on our position. Chen, we need immediate support fire." Sarah's training took over instantly. Through her scope, she identified the most immediate threats, guards who were moving to flank Morrison's team, or who had elevated positions that gave them tactical advantages. Her first shot dropped a sniper who was setting up on the roof of the main building. Her second eliminated a machine gunner who was about to open fire from a window. But this wasn't like the controlled environment of Afghanistan where she had time to carefully line up each shot. This was chaos, with her teammates moving rapidly through the compound, while enemies appeared and disappeared behind cover. Sarah had to track multiple moving targets simultaneously while ensuring she didn't accidentally hit any of her own team members. Multiple tangos moving toward the main building. Porter's voice crackled through the radio. "Chen, can you take the 3 moving along the east wall?" Sarah swung her rifle toward the indicated area, quickly identifying the 3 enemy fighters Porter had spotted. They were moving tactically, using cover and concealment as they tried to get behind Morrison's team. Sarah's first shot took down the lead fighter, causing the other 2 to dive for cover behind a low wall. Instead of waiting for them to show themselves again, Sarah did something that surprised even Porter. She rapidly calculated where the 2 hidden enemies would have to move to reach better fighting positions, and began firing shots that weren't aimed directly at them, but at the spots they would have to cross to advance further. The tactic worked perfectly. When the 2 fighters tried to move to more advantageous positions, they ran directly into Sarah's precisely placed shots. In less than 20 seconds, she had eliminated 3 targets and prevented Morrison's team from being flanked. "Outstanding shooting, Chen," Morrison's voice came through the radio. "But we've got a problem. Intelligence was wrong. There are at least 15 hostiles in here, not 8. And they've called for reinforcements. We need to accelerate the timeline." Sarah continued providing overwatch as Morrison's team fought their way through the compound. Her shooting was surgical, eliminating specific threats without causing collateral damage. When Williams was pinned down by a machine gunner, Sarah put a bullet through the enemy fighter's head from 400 meters away. When Ramirez was about to be overwhelmed by 3 attackers, Sarah's rapid fire gave him the seconds he needed to reach cover. Then Morrison's voice came through with the news they had all been hoping for. "We've located the target and 2 American hostages. Beginning extraction procedures now." But their route to the extraction point was blocked by a group of enemy fighters who had established a strong defensive position. Morrison's team was trapped in the compound with no way to break through to safety. "Chen, we need you to do something that's not in any manual," Morrison said through the radio. "We need you to leave your overwatch position and get down here to help us fight our way out." It was exactly the kind of rapid role transition that Sarah had trained for. But executing it under these conditions was something else entirely. She had to abandon her sniper position, move 400 meters across open, ground under fire, and then immediately transition to close-quarters combat mode. Sarah secured her sniper rifle and began moving down the ridge at a dead run, using every piece of cover available while enemy bullets whined past her head. Porter provided covering fire from his position, but Sarah was essentially on her own as she crossed the dangerous ground between the ridge and the compound. When she reached the compound walls, Sarah could hear intense gunfire from inside the courtyard where her team was trapped. Without hesitation, she pulled out her sidearm and prepared to enter the fight. Everything she had learned during training room clearing, close-quarters combat, tactical movement in urban environments would be put to the test in the next few minutes. The rear entrance to the compound was guarded by 2 enemy fighters who were focused on the battle happening in the courtyard. Sarah approached silently, using techniques she had learned during SEAL training. Her first target never knew she was there. The second spun around just as Sarah fired, eliminating the threat before he could raise his weapon. Inside the compound, Sarah found her team pinned down behind a concrete barrier, while 8 or 9 enemy fighters fired at them from protected positions around the courtyard. The situation looked hopeless. Morrison's team was outnumbered and outgunned, with no clear route to escape. But Sarah saw something her teammates couldn't see from their low position behind the barrier. There was a way to flank the enemy positions if someone could get to the roof of the building where the hostages were being held. It would require crossing 20 meters of open ground under fire, then climbing to the roof while being shot at. But from there she would have clear shots at all the enemy positions. Without waiting for orders, Sarah sprinted across the open courtyard. Enemy bullets kicked up dust around her feet, but her movement was so fast and unexpected that none of them found their target. She reached the building wall and began climbing, using her equipment and upper body strength to pull herself up to the roof. From her elevated position, Sarah could see exactly what needed to happen. Using her sidearm and the rifle she had carried into the compound, she began systematically eliminating the enemy fighters who had Morrison's team pinned down. Each shot was precise, calculated, and deadly effective. In less than 3 minutes, the courtyard was clear of enemy threats. Sarah had eliminated 6 fighters from her rooftop position, while Morrison's team took advantage of the distraction to finish off the remaining hostiles. "Area secure," Morrison announced through the radio. "Excellent work, everyone." "Chen, that was some of the best tactical shooting I've ever seen." As the team prepared to evacuate with their target and the rescued hostages, Sarah climbed down from the roof and rejoined her teammates. She had successfully transitioned from sniper to assault trooper to urban combat specialist, all within the span of an hour, and had been instrumental in the mission's success. Porter approached her as they waited for the extraction helicopter. "Chen, I've been a SEAL for 8 years, and I've never seen anyone make the kind of shots you made tonight. That rooftop work was incredible." Morrison gathered the team for a brief debrief before they boarded the helicopter. "Gentlemen and lady, that was textbook special operations work. We adapted to changing conditions, supported each other when things went wrong, and completed the mission objectives. Chen, your performance tonight exceeded all expectations." As the helicopter lifted off with the team, their captured target, and the rescued hostages, Sarah felt a profound sense of accomplishment. She had proven to herself and to her teammates that she belonged among the elite warriors of the SEAL teams. More than that, she had demonstrated that her unique combination of medical training, marksmanship skills, and tactical adaptability made her an invaluable asset to Special Operations Forces. The quiet field medic from Texas who had discovered her shooting abilities during a firefight in Afghanistan had completed her transformation. She was now a fully qualified Navy SEAL, capable of operating at the highest levels of military special operations. But more importantly, she had found her true calling, protecting her teammates and serving her country in the most demanding and dangerous situations imaginable. As the helicopter flew through the darkness toward their base, Sarah thought about the journey that had brought her to this moment. From treating wounded Marines in Afghanistan, to making impossible shots under pressure, to completing one of the most challenging training programs in the military, she had discovered capabilities within herself that she never knew existed. The SEALs around her were no longer looking at her as an untested newcomer or a field medic trying to play soldier. They were looking at her as a trusted teammate, a warrior who had proven herself under the most demanding conditions possible. Master Chief Morrison had said it best during their debrief. Sarah Chen wasn't just a SEAL now, she was exactly the kind of SEAL the teams needed for the complex challenges of modern special operations warfare.